Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katie Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany in Rome, Katie in Seattle. And today, we're going native again, sort of. If you haven't listened to part one of Going Native, which came out last week, take a listen to that one first. We got quite a number of responses from people about this episode, sharing their own experiences and observations from their own experience moving abroad and living somewhere else, and what they adopted and what they did not. And we figured we'd share a few of them with you today as a follow-up and maybe continue the discussion ever so slightly. All right, so we're going to start today with Heather. Heather contacted us through our Instagram account, the Bittersweet Life Podcast, if you want to find us, and she sent us this voice memo.
So I was listening to this podcast last night before I went to bed, and so I guess my thoughts on the whole going native thing are, for me personally, my goal is to remain as authentically myself as possible throughout this entire process. So I don't necessarily want to relinquish parts of myself that I already like or that I'm comfortable with, like the foods that I like, or the way that I dress, or the way that I interact with the world. But it's also important to me that I, can fully assimilate into my local community and can make local friends here as well, because we're planning on remaining here, hopefully for the rest of our lives. And, I'm not trying to fool anybody personally. I am who I am. My history is what it is. I'm happy with that. Like, I don't know if I would have felt that way in my 20s, but I think in my 30s with a couple kids who were born here in Italy, I just feel like maybe my perspective on it has shifted. I also definitely think that I did say before I moved here that, I don't want to get to an expat circle. I don't have any expat friends. I would just rather, assimilate with Italians. And that's true. And I've made wonderful Italian friends, especially since becoming a mom. It makes it so much easier. But our expat friend circle that we've gotten involved with are completely invaluable to me, just because it's so nice to be able to directly relate to someone who speaks your language, who really understands what you're going through in what is kind of a unique situation as an expat here in Italy. And it's honestly just both circles have been completely invaluable to me. I don't know what I would do without either one of them. And I don't think I would have said that in my 20s. So maybe this comes a little bit of experience and life experience in general. But yeah, both circles are hugely important to me.
So that's Heather, living in Italy as well. Tiffany, I have a couple questions for you following up what she said before I get to her larger point about being friends with other expats when you're living in a different country. Did you find that it was easier to assimilate with other Italians in your neighborhood once you had a child than it was when it was just Tiffany on her own?
I don't really think it's, for me at least, a question of assimilating, and I think this is what she meant. It's easier to make friends. It's easier to make local Italian friends if it's a mom's circle, if it's the other moms at your kid's school or at the park you go to every afternoon. It's much, much easier. Maybe I listened wrong, but I don't necessarily think she meant it's easier to assimilate once you're a mom, but it's easier to make friends. And I mean, I think it really can depend if those are deep relationships or not. For me, I'm trying to think, but I don't think any of the mom friends that I've made have been deep relationships. Not to say I don't have deep relationships with Italian women. I have a few, but not moms that I met, through my son's school or anything like that. So not that it can't happen, but I know we've had this discussion before about it's easier to make friends when you're a mom. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. I think it's easier to meet more people. Whether or not they're going to become good friends, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not into other moms. No, that's not true. I actually thought it was really sweet. I don't know if you could hear. I think she was holding her baby.
Yeah, I think so too.
Could you hear baby noises?
Yeah, like little.
I think I could hear baby noises, and I also felt like she was trying to talk quietly. because she had a baby on her probably, and I thought that was really cute.
That is cute. So obviously when I lived in Rome, which was only, I knew I was only going to be there for a year, although I guess I didn't know, no. There was a chance that we were going to try to make it work out longer. But I kind of had a sense going in that my likelihood of becoming friends with a bunch of Italian people, like deep friends, was pretty low unless those people already spoke English, because I went in country with no Italian whatsoever. And I think even the most ambitious person can only learn so much Italian in a year. And obviously, if you've been listening to the show for a while, I was not that person. But so I kind of went in being like, if I am going to have friends, they're most likely going to mostly be expat people. And I did end up with a couple of Italian friends, but like as predicted, they were very good at speaking English. And so we could join at that footing. But I mean, when you
Can
went
I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Quick question. Were any of your good Italian friends that you just mentioned female?
Um, I mean, the one that really pops to mind that I would say this was a good friend of mine, it was male. You know, the others were kind of friendly, but not, I probably, every time I come to Rome, I think to call this guy. I don't think to call anybody else. So,
Yeah, I'm not saying that because I'm trying to suggest that he was interested in you romantically.
Oh,
I'm not
no.
suggesting that. I mean, it's very possible because you're a gorgeous woman.
He wasn't. I can guarantee it.
But and again, I don't want to open a new can of worms, but it's very difficult to make, I have found, friendships with Italian women. I've been here 20 years. I have very few. I mean, I can count on one hand the people who I would even call friends. And one of them is my sister-in-law.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I'm thinking as you talk, and I'm thinking like most of the Italian women I knew were Italian women who had lived somewhere else. Also, they were maybe even from Rome, but they had lived for a time in the States, or they had lived for a time somewhere else. So, yeah, interesting.
Yes, it's very, very true. And in fact, I went to, and I know I mentioned it on this show, I went to a Halloween party a couple years ago at a friend's house, and she's a friend that I knew from the States. Her kids go to international school. And I was so delighted by the Italian women at that party. I was like, these women are just like me. Like usually when I meet Italian women, I feel like we have nothing in common. Like our relationship is superficial. But these women, I was like, I could be friends with these women, like really friends with them. So I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is. And I wonder if that is the same if you lived anywhere. Like, would that be the same in Germany? Would you have a hard time making friends with German women, but not if they had lived abroad? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. Or is that like I mean, but because why would it just be women? That's the other thing is.
I mean, I don't know.
Are you? I mean, this is maybe something to analyze for a different day. But are you so culturally different from Italian women that you guys just don't really have that much in common? But yet you have more in common with Italian men? I mean, maybe. I don't know. But
I mean, I don't have a lot of Italian men friends either. I can't.
Yeah.
The only ones I can think of
you have
are
no
like
friends. That's no, just kidding.
Yeah, the point is I have no friends. Yeah. No real friends. No, I mean the male quote unquote friends that I have I'm pretty sure all either partners of my friends, whether they're Italian or expats. I mean, that's it. Yeah, that's it. I don't think I have any male friends that I didn't meet through their partner. I don't think. I mean, there may be somebody I'm forgetting.
Yeah, as soon as we hang up, you'll be like, "Oh yeah, that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy."
You're my best friend, my soulmate.
But what about her bigger question here? I mean, I want to ask for you, like her intention to sort of really go all in, to move to Italy and only have Italian friends. And she, as in her 20s, she was like, I'm not going to have any expat friends. It's going to be all Italian friends. Did you, since you kind of went in to Italy also in your 20s, knowing some Italian, did you have that intention too? Or were you like, let me find some people from home as fast as I can?
I was just, let me find some people, full stop. Like I needed friends. Like I needed humans. I was so isolated. You know, my first several months in Rome, I was completely isolated. So it was like, be my friend. I don't care where you're from.
Yeah.
Just be my friend.
I'll take
but
it. Yeah.
I would never have gone in with that intention. I would never have intentionally tried to avoid expats as friends. And I think that what she says is totally true, that expat friends are invaluable when you're an expat. You don't want to only have expat friends. Like that's if you're a long-term expat at least. You do want to have some meaningful connection with people actually from the country that you live in, if possible. What she said about, people who have that shared experience, who understand you, it's incredibly comforting, especially in the first few years. And I would almost say necessary to be happy, really.
Well, thank you so much, Heather, for sending that in. And let's intersperse some of these comments with you did an Instagram story where you asked people to respond to two different questions, and I thought we could splice some of those in. And one of the questions that you asked was, what aspect of your home culture would you never give up? And you invited people to type something in. Why don't we just read some of what people had to say? And I think since many of you on Instagram have names that are not actually your name, we're just going to read your comment and hopefully you recognize yourself rather than reading your name and then your comment. But thank you for commenting, all of you who did. And let's just read a few of these.
All right. So I'm going to start with this one because this one is one I share. Eating dinner between 6 and 7 p.m.
I totally agree with that. Another one, speaking English. I totally get that one because I definitely didn't give up speaking English when I moved abroad.
Yeah, well, that goes back to my original thought last week about speaking English to a native, one of your compatriots. Sorry, speaking a foreign language to a compatriot just feels weird. But I want to, before we go on, eating dinner between 6 and 7, what is the benefit in your mind to doing that? Why would you? Because I feel like a lot of new expats, I feel like, with the exception of you and me, I feel like nobody wants to be that person out for dinner at 6 o'clock. Like there's something very uncool about eating dinner early in Europe. It's like, oh my gosh, that's what tourists do.
Yeah.
And you do it.
I'll
and
totally
I
do it.
I mean,
you know why? Multiple reasons why. In fact, I'll even eat before 6. I'll throw down on this comment and say, hey, sign me up for 5. If I've had a long day, I'm into 5.
I can't do
5:30.
5. Wow. Not a full meal. I can't. I'm not hungry at that time.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, for me, I eat when I'm hungry, first and foremost. Unless I'm meeting somebody for dinner. And even then, I might be snacking because I'm already hungry before I get there. I eat when I'm hungry. And in Europe, it's like a gold star if you're hungry that early because you can just walk into a place and sit down. It's
Well,
for the
provided it's
convenience
open.
factor. I mean, yeah, but a lot of them are. At least in Rome, where I kick around the most, a lot of places are open by 5, And not that I'm there at crack of 5, but like, if you go early, you don't have to stand around forever. It's like a superpower in Europe.
It is a superpower. Claudia and I, we go, but our version of early is 7:30. When we want to go out to dinner and know that we're going to be able to get a table and not have to wait around, we go at 7:30. And it feels so early. And there's like never anybody in the restaurant. But then by the time, like half an hour in, yes, I don't particularly like being alone in a restaurant. But it's 7:30 for me is early enough that you miss the crowd, you get in before the crowd, and this probably gives away my age, you are done so early, you're home early.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. That's another thing too is, I mean, I don't know about you, and maybe it's an American thing, but I don't really love to eat that late. Like, I don't want it unless I'll eat late if I'm going to be out for a while. But if I'm like eating, if I'm going out and then my plan is to go home and start getting ready for bed, I don't want to eat a giant plate of pasta and then go home. Like, I'd rather eat the giant plate of pasta at 5 o'clock and then get ready for bed, start getting ready for bed around 9:30, later. I mean, most days I go to bed later than that.
Well, it's much healthier. Everyone talks about how Italians have so much healthier eating habits than Americans. And for the most part, that is true. But for this one thing, eating a big meal before bed is not healthy. And it's not only not healthy because you're going to obviously put on more weight if you're eating right before bed, but also because you're not supposed to be digesting when you're sleeping.
Yeah,
you're supposed, that process is supposed to start before. So I'm not really sure why it's so popular here. Unless it's just a question of, different hours, different work hours. But I will definitely, when I'm at home, I try to eat at 6. It doesn't always happen. It's not happening as much as it used to because Aurelio has many more activities now that push it back until about 7. But I'm usually not starting to eat before 7, which feels early for Italy.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's blaze through some of the rest of these. We got a savory breakfast with a boiled egg, bread, cheese, and ham.
Sounds like a brilliant hotel breakfast.
Following up on that, another person says loving and making big American style breakfast on the weekend. And another person also says cooking with paprika and Sunday family lunch. All kind of related. A lot of our things that we don't want to give up involve food, which is interesting. Katie, who went on our Rome trip, says you can pry my iced coffees to go for my cold dead hands. and and maybe one more. Tom says, because it's so different, Tom. Halloween. Would not want to give up Halloween. Yeah,
You don't have to anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to anymore. They now kind of celebrate Halloween over in Italy specifically. All right, why don't you play another comment?
Yes, I have a comment from Laurel. And the Laurel has kind of an interesting situation because she's not technically an expat, but she spends roughly half of the year in Italy because
So,
she runs retreats. And she spends huge swaths of time over here, either leading retreats or doing research on retreats. And I believe she may own property over here as well. So she's here a lot, but not more than half the year. So, I
I'd
mean,
call her part-time expat at that point.
part-time expat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
50-50.
And I think maybe we should have her on the show one day because I think her perspective would be interesting.
Sure.
Really, like having one foot in each place must be its own challenge. She talks a little bit about that in this message.
Ciao, Bella. Oh my gosh, your last podcast had me cracking up for so many reasons. Spending half the year mostly here in the US and then half in Italy. There's just so many things that were so similar to what you had to say. But I think it's even funnier spending the half to half because I come home and I've acclimated and adjusted to the things there. Then I acclimate and adjust here, and then I have to go back there. So it is pretty funny. But emails, most of my vendors are obviously Italian. So the formality is so hard as an American because I just want to be like, hey, how are you? And I have to pull myself back and try almost not to be as friendly and to be much more formal. And then once I become friends with them, I feel like I can do that. Or have a relationship over the years, and I feel like I can do that. Oh, and speaking Italian, I think even when I met you, I spoke in Italian because when I'm there, I try really hard to speak Italian so that I don't get in the habit of speaking English and so that my Italian gets better. Oh, and I definitely think restaurants anymore ask if you want things together, even though they probably don't think it's proper, but often they're like in CMA. So I think you need to teach Katie how to say in CMA when she wants something together, because I know that Josh and I do. But I actually do like the formality of eating here and that or Italy, and then coming home, that really actually makes it difficult because I do feel like food's all plopped on a plate and just kind of given to you. Anyways, I think that's it. I hope you're doing well, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.
Okay, she does send one more message in a second.
Oh, I thought of two more things. One, the wet hair. Oh my gosh, 20 years ago, that was so hard for me to get used to. And it's so funny. So now my trick is, because I obviously have way too much hair, is to wrap it up in a really tight bun or a braid so that nobody notices, hopefully, that it's still soaking wet, because I don't have time for that, especially when I'm working. Oh my goodness. So that had me cracking up. And then the other thing was about the clothing. I think they definitely are slipping a little bit in Italy. But I will say, when I get home, I feel like everyone looks so sloppy. And I do miss kind of the niceness of, people dressing up and the women wanting to look nice, even if it is to go to the market or something, where I look around after being there for weeks and I'm like, oh, it's so sad. Anyways, ciao.
Yeah, I love that actually perspective of going back and forth between the two places. That's very funny and very telling. Like when you're asking the question of like, what do you adopt and what do you not? What could be more stark than when you're there 50% of the time, to like see the differences back to back constantly. It's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it might make it a lot harder to adopt those habits, those cultural habits because you know you're just going to have to go back. You might not even bother, kind of thing. I
Well,
don't know.
or I mean, you just pick and choose. You pick the ones. I mean, sort of what Heather was getting at too is like, I want to be my authentic self. You just pick and choose the ones that feel right to you at the time. And like she said, she's like, I'm not going to mess with having to dry my hair all the time just because they want me to. I'll try to avoid their comments, but this is one thing I'm not going to adopt, and I don't feel like I have to. And maybe it's easier to do that if you're not there 100% of the time. I don't know. Maybe she'd get really sick of a bun and a braid if she was there every single day, year after year after year.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I adopted that so thoroughly that now it's become like second nature. Like I wouldn't even think about leaving my hair to air dry unless it's the middle of summer and it's super hot outside. It's because my husband gives me a hard time about it.
See, you can't get away. You just can't even.
Yeah, I can't get away. It's not like I can even put my hair up in a bun. He'll see and he'll notice.
He'll be like, "Is this
"Your hair's
bun wet? What's happening right here?" Yeah. You're gonna catch your death. What are you doing? Let's play this back to back with another voice memo that we got. This one is from Tony. Thank you so much for sending this in, and I want to play it here because there are many things that she's in a very different situation, but she agrees on many of the same things as your friend there.
Hi, it's Tony. I moved to the UK in 2016. I've also lived in the south of France teaching English. I'm originally from Vienna in Austria. I've not been abroad as long as Tiffany has, but I did move when I just turned 15. So I think because of that, I've probably gone native a lot more than like people who might have moved when they were older. The hardest thing to adapt when I first moved was people found me very rude. British people are very polite and I'm a very direct person. Like I wouldn't say rude, but I do say what's like on my mind and I'm very honest. And it puts people off. Not Austrians, but definitely in the UK. That's something that's really evolved. Like I would say I've really gone native with that because I'm a lot more polite now, sometimes overly so, and it really annoys my parents. Like when I talk to strangers, like they'll make fun of me. But I absolutely love living abroad because all the weird stuff you do just gets chalked up to being like an expat. You can be a bit of an oddball in your own country and people abroad don't notice it because they're like, oh, wow, she's from Austria. Like, I guess people just are like that there. I would say as a young person, it's great living in the UK, especially in a city, because it's a lot more inclusive than Austria. Like Austria is a very traditional Catholic country, kind of, I guess, similar to Italy. I have a lot of chronic illness problems, and in the UK it's normal that like a university or an employer would give like a lot more support with disabilities, with chronic illnesses. One thing I've really struggled coming to terms with is like the idea of living in a monarchy. It's probably a superficial thing for most people, but there's so much pomp and ceremony, and there's a lot of people who really are into the monarchy as a concept, and to me it just seems incredibly unjust. It has been really hard kind of like having to bite my tongue in a lot of public circumstances because so many people just love the fact that there's a king and stuff like that, especially like recently with the coronation and stuff. Had to laugh when you were speaking about like the hair drying illness thing. I guess in Austria, because we're so close to Italy, we have a lot of like similar superstitions and beliefs. That's like a thing I grew up believing and I still fully believe in, that you have to dry your hair or you will get ill. And people in the UK make fun of me. They laugh at me. They think I'm absolutely insane and try to explain science to me. And I understand, but it's true. I swear it's true. If I don't dry my hair and I leave the window open or I go outside, like I will be ill the next day. Lastly, and please don't judge me on this, Tiffany, the language thing. So one of my best friends, Kat, moved to Scotland in 2019, and we do speak English with each other, even though we both grew up in Austria. Now, I've lived in the UK for absolute ages, but she hasn't, and we just find it easier because we speak English in our everyday lives, and we're both at quite a high level. I mean, we'll switch back and forth when we're speaking on the phone, but when we text, we exclusively speak English. I don't know. It's just how we do it. I absolutely love your podcast, and that last episode really resonated with me. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to next Monday.
So what struck me most about this comment was actually not, I mean, also what she said, but even more so how her voice sounds. She sounds, to me, to my ears, probably not to a native Brit, but to me, she sounds completely English. I can maybe hear like the tiniest little hint of some accent, but it's not clear where that might be. And I think if she hadn't said it, I would never have guessed that she's from Austria. Because I think there's like a very, very specific Austrian accent. There's a specific Viennese accent. Like imagine like a cartoon version of Sigmund Freud, right? And there's your Viennese accent. But I didn't hear any of that. So I'm like, wow. I mean, yes, she moved abroad very young.
Yeah.
So there's that.
15.
But it's
yeah.
like, how much more going native can you go that the way you talk is almost indistinguishable from a local?
Yeah, I mean, we've said that with you before, that you've been in Italy now for almost 20 years, and still you feel like your accent is one where an Italian would be like, that's not a native
no.
Italian speaker.
I don't think I fool anyone.
Yeah, like you just didn't adopt the accent like she did. I wonder.
Well, I didn't move young enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
There's an age cutoff kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that if I lived here my whole life, it would get better. I can kind of fake it, but it takes a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of like physical energy in your mouth. Just the same way as if you've ever faked an accent, like if you ever faked a British accent or a Southern accent or something, your mouth gets tired because it's not the movement that your mouth is used to.
Interesting.
Right? Because it's your mouth that makes the different sounds, right? It's the way you move your mouth that changes the sound. And also like, where you put your tonality, if it's in your nose or in your, there are other things. But so I feel like if I were to try to speak Italian with the perfect accent, it would just be too much of an effort.
Yeah, interesting. Just side note, Aurelio, your son, growing up speaking Italian and English, what would you say his accent is? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming his accent is Italian on the Italian side, but is he doing the full American accent on the English side?
I mean, I can't really tell. And I think it's because he's my son and I hear him all the time. And so to me, it sounds like he doesn't have an accent, but every so often I do hear it and there is a little accent. It doesn't sound like an Italian accent, though. I don't think. It kind of sounds like, I don't know if you're familiar with this. There's kind of an expat accent. It's like this undefined. If you've ever met someone who's lived abroad for their entire life, where they're third culture kids, right? So they've grown up in a foreign, quote unquote, foreign country, but they're not from there, but they've lived there their whole lives and they speak English because their parents speak English. So they've been speaking English from birth. They often adopt this weird kind of like, it's like the absence of an accent. There's no accent. There's not a Northwestern accent or a Southern accent or a British accent or an Australian. There's no accent. You kind of start to notice it when you live over here, when you live in a foreign country. I think you can hear that. And I can't really describe how it sounds, but there's just something tiny, tiny bit unnatural about it.
I have a totally different question, because I was just thinking when you were saying a northern and southern accent, and I often think about people who move to the United States as expats or immigrants and what their experience would be, and traveling across the United States, the accent on English that you're going to encounter is going to vary so dramatically based on what part of the country you're in. I know Italy is way smaller, but is there that big of a range in the accent from north to south? If I was an immigrant traveling through Italy, speaking Italian, would I encounter as many kind of puzzling varieties as you would come across traveling through the U.S.?
Way more. Way, way more. Italy is a country of dialects, not just accents. Like when my in-laws speak to each other, they speak in about 50% pure Italian, let's say, and about 50% Neapolitan. And I mean, sometimes I don't understand it. And I've been hanging out with them for 20 years, or not 20 years, let's say 13 years. And sometimes I don't understand their Neapolitan words. There's just different words. And the Sicilian accent, and then where you are in Sicily, the northern accent. Like, have you ever heard someone from Venice talk? They talk so weird. They have the weirdest accent. No offense to anyone listening who's from Venice. But the Milanese accent, the Roman accent is very strong. And, there is a quote unquote official language now because it's a united country, but it wasn't a united country until 1861. So
yeah,
the dialects were, I think some of the dialects, like the Sardinian dialect, like indistinguishable, like you couldn't understand if you were from Milan and you went to Sardinia, you would not understand what people were saying. Now children are taught the correct proper Italian in school. But the older generations, like if you meet older people like in their 70s or 80s, particularly in rural contexts, and you are from the north and you're in this, it's very likely that you won't understand them. Like literally, not just that you can't make out their accent, but like the words are different.
Wow. All right, I just want to read one more comment that came in from, and I'm going to pronounce this name wrong or right now. We'll find out, and you can tell me. Katrin, possibly Katrine. Correct me. Let's get to know each other better. Send me a note. But we'll say Katrin for the purposes here. She writes, my husband and I moved from the U.S. to Scotland, so the lifestyle isn't all that different. But one thing we've thoroughly adopted is tea drinking. We'll still have a coffee in the morning, but then drink tea throughout the rest of the day. It just makes sense when it's cold and damp most of the year. We've even started bringing our preferred brand of tea on vacation with us, like proper Brits.
I love that.
I love it too. And I appreciate her, the cold climate that she's dealing with, because when it's winter here in Seattle, the cold, wet climate also means I'm drinking tea all day long. So I can completely relate. I have my morning teas that have some caffeine in them, and I have a wide variety of afternoon teas with no caffeine in them. So I can continue the hot liquid trend all day long. So I support this.
I support it too. I need to get some caffeine-free teas. Because I do sometimes worry that my caffeine consumption, which has always been so low because I don't drink coffee, is inching up because I drink more and more tea. And as far as traveling with tea, I am totally behind this. And I do it every time I go pretty much anywhere. I mean, I don't go to England often. If I went to England, I probably wouldn't need to. But when I go to the States, I mean, I was at my mom's house and she literally did not have any tea in the house. I mean, if she came to stay with me and I didn't have coffee, like that would be like a major problem. You know what I mean? Like I would be in trouble. Like, obviously, I live with Claudio, so I have coffee in the house.
Yes.
But like it would be a problem. And I just think, why don't you have tea in the house? But I had brought my own tea, so it was okay.
That's very funny. You know, I'm kind of the opposite in that I don't bring my own tea. But you know how whenever you're in a hotel room somewhere, they often offer you like 2 to 3 tea packets. Like they'll have like the little coffee making machine in the room. Sometimes, but often. Like in my last travel through Europe and England, almost everyone had tea in the room. And I am one of the people who will like, well, I paid for this room. So take
all the tea.
I'll take all the tea packets with me to wherever the next location is, just so I always have some as I'm moving through the trip. And if I don't drink it all during the trip, I come back with a whole pile of tea packets, which is part of one of the reason why in my afternoon teas I have a great variety of tea I wouldn't normally buy, because I just pick up the free ones along the way. And so, yeah, that's a little money-saving tip, people. I'll teach you how to be frugal and, I don't know, miserly. I have tips for that. Maybe we should do a whole episode.
I think there's a difference between being frugal and being miserly, Katie. Don't sell yourself short. You are not a miser.
You know what else I do?
What?
Is if you're at a hotel that has particularly nice little bar of soap, I'll take it with me. Oh, yeah. Because I feel like they're going to just throw that little bar of soap away.
Yeah. No. I think you are totally within your right to take it. I don't take it because I don't like using bars of soap. Well, I am a gel soap, a liquid soap person.
Oh.
Don't want a bar of soap. It gets what's that? What's the word for that?
Slimy.
It gets all like slimy.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't handle that.
No. So I have a whole little bag. We have a little tiny pocket shower off my office, and it's so tiny in there that, there's not even a wide enough ledge to have a real bar of soap sitting there, but you can put a little tiny bar of soap there. And so I have a whole little bag of little tiny soaps that have been taken from different hotels, like all over the world, that I use in rotation in that shower. So when I am coming down to having no little soap left is when I know I need to take my next trip, because I need those little soaps.
You need your soap. You need it.
I need those soaps.
Here's a question for you. As a miserly, so-called self-described miserly person.
Frugal.
I was at a hotel in Boston a couple weeks ago, and they didn't have tea in the room, but they had the tea set up in the lobby, just in like the morning. And they have very good tea. They had tea bags, but it was very high quality. And I would go down every morning and get myself a cup of tea because you know how expensive tea is in the United
Oh,
States.
yes.
Let's not go there. And there was a lady there and she was pocketing. I think she pocketed like 3 tea bags. Now, is that okay if it's not in your room? Because
Here-
I've definitely been tempted to do that.
Here's what I would say. Yes, but it would be like one in the cup, one in your pocket.
Yeah,
every day.
not like 10.
Yeah. I don't think I'd grab like all of the one flavor,
No, she
you know.
didn't take them all. She took like maybe 2 or 3.
But yeah, well, I
But I was
stick
like,
one in
I
my
see
back
what you're
pocket.
doing, lady.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll do it. I paid for that tea. You know, I didn't pay for like the entire tray of tea that they're offering, but you know, a couple cups a day is reasonable. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, one in the cup, one in the pocket. That's my
I'll
recommendation.
remember that.
All right. Well, let's end with people who are answering your other question that you put up, which was if you lived in Italy, and I know some of you listening have never been there, so you can hypothesize, but if you lived in Italy, what is the first aspect of the culture that you would adopt? And why don't we just read a smattering of what people had to say?
I mean, 2 people mentioned the afternoon naps, but I hate to tell you this. They've kind of gone out with a lira. They're not really a thing anymore. Maybe in the small towns when everything closes up, but it's really, you know, people really work straight through these days.
That's terrible. When I was there in 2013, they weren't working straight through. So this must be new.
Well, look, okay. I mean, are you talking about shopkeepers or are you talking about everybody?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but it did seem like people
Some
ate,
shops still
everything shut
close.
down. Yeah, we all went home, we took a nap.
I mean, I wouldn't say everything. I mean, I feel like only the small independently run shops shut down. If it's like the Nike store, they're not shutting down. If
Well,
it's
that's
the
because
Gap,
that's
they're not shutting
American.
down.
That's because we're Americanizing you. We're like,
Yeah,
get
but
to work.
even like the Zara doesn't shut, the Mango, those aren't American companies. It's just the little tiny ones. And obviously some restaurants close after lunch, but that's for a different reason. But shopkeepers are only a small slice of the population. If you're working anywhere else, if you're working in an office, you're not going home after lunch.
Well, here's the thing, though. The question being, like, if you were to live in Italy, what would be the first aspect you would adopt? I still think it's a legit answer. You know, I'm going to adopt the idea of the afternoon siesta, whether or not people are doing it or not. I'm giving myself permission as a person in Italy to nap after lunch. All right, what else? Let's name a couple other ones. No eating on the go is a good one. No more fast food, no more eating in your car, no more. Although, to be fair, Italians do eat on the go when it comes to eating breakfast. You know, Tiffany and I have told you before that we like to sit and read while we eat our breakfast in the morning, whereas Claudio still stands at a counter like as if he is about to rush out to work. So
Yeah, he's down. Well, even in the even at home, he'll stand up.
that's what I
While
mean.
he's
Like,
having his
yeah, you'll
coffee.
be sitting
Yeah.
there reading a nice book. He'll be, you know, throwing a cornetto down and heading on out. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
there is
And
some
they
eating
do
on the
eat
go.
fast food here. They do eat fast food here.
True, there is a
I
Burger
wouldn't say
King.
I wouldn't say it's as prevalent, but they do. But I think on the whole, it's true that Italians take more time over lunch and dinner, and especially they take more time over lunch.
Now here's a question for you. Tom writes, "They're into volleyball, right? I do that." Now, I have never equated volleyball with Italy before in my life, but is that a thing?
Not that I know of. I mean, I'm sure there are people who play volleyball here, sure.
Sure.
Just like they play everywhere, I suppose. But no, I think there's way more volleyball going on in California than in Italy.
And one more final comment from Katie, who came on the Rome trip, which you can do at Katie's recommendation, I'm sure. This coming October, from the 6th to the 12th, we're taking another group of lucky listeners with us to Rome for a positively fantastic week. We've been hearing from the people who have already committed to going, asking questions about travel, making their travel arrangements. And I have to say, every time we answer those questions, I feel a little bit excited. We're actually really doing this. These people are buying their plane tickets today to go. And you could be one of those people who's buying your plane ticket later today to actually join us in Rome. But Katie says, "I don't know mine, but my husband has definitely adopted the old man shuffle during the passeggiata." So there you go. I'm assuming, Katie, I'm imagining him with his hands behind his back as he walks, because I kind of associate that with the shuffle, the old man shuffle.
Yeah, it's classic.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for everybody who followed up on this idea. And we're going to leave it there for now. Unless, Tiffany, you have any final comments you want to make.
I did kind of have one thing I wanted to add, which has to do with Tony's comment that I forgot to mention before, which is that she mentioned that she's much more polite now because British people are more polite, and in Austria, people maybe are a little bit more brusque. I don't think it's so black and white with Italy and the United States. I think it depends on the situation. But I thought that was interesting. I can definitely see how the Brits come across as being very polite and very correct in the way that they speak, in the way that they answer you, and a little more formal. I can see that. Whereas continental Europeans, I feel like are a little bit more like just a little more
Forthright?
yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, a little brusque. Yeah, I guess I already used that word, but yes, I think that would be. And it doesn't mean that they're rude people. It's just there's not the same standard of formality, I think.
Or chit chat, perhaps. Yeah.
Perhaps.
Interesting.
Although when I was in Germany, I gotta say, I was sitting on the end of an aisle in an opera house, and I chose to stay in my seat during intermission because I didn't have anywhere to go or anyone to hang out with. So I was by myself. So I had my book. So I just read through the intermission. And every time someone walked in, I stood up, obviously, because the rows were very close together. And every single person said Dankeschön, or, every single one was I felt so polite. Every single one. And there were like 20 people who walked past me, and not one person walked past me without smiling and thanking me.
No one smacked the book out of your hand.
I did get kind of tired of standing up, I gotta say.
Keep reading the
I think
same
by
line.
the end, I was just moving my knees over.
Since we're talking about theater, I'll end with this note. If you are in Seattle right now and you are listening to this on the actual Monday that it comes out, so if you're listening 2 years from now, forget what I'm about to say. But there is a very fun play that's happening here in Seattle right now. I just saw it last night. It's at the Rep Theater. It's called Fat Ham. It's very, very enjoyable. It comes to us from New York. I believe it won the Pulitzer Prize within the recent memory. And it is just a delight of a play. So if you do happen to be in Seattle and you're looking for something to do and you're hearing my voice on the day it comes out, then look into it. All right, well, we'll leave it there. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye. And seriously, if going to Rome in October sounds like an amazing idea to you, why not get the details? Just send us an email, bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll send you the information. bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to see you anytime, but we'd also really love to see you in Rome.
in Austria, there's just a lot more regulations. Like one thing my boyfriend and I recently kind of had a fight about is I've been learning to drive. And I've noticed, like, in the UK, it's so easy to get your license compared to Austria. And I really like the way they do it in Austria. Like, you have to, like, do a first aid course, learn how to do CPR, and go to, like, a doctor to get checked out. You have to do theoretical lessons and practical lessons and all that stuff, and 2 different driving tests. And my boyfriend had to do barely any of that stuff. He hasn't even driven on the motorway, and he's had his license for a very long time, and he didn't have to do that for any of his like lessons. There's like a lot more rules and regulations in Austria, but I do really appreciate that because like road safety is really important